It's time for EdTech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.
Urban internet usage in Nigeria currently stands at 57%, while rural penetration remains at just 23%, one of the widest digital gaps on the continent. And that gap doesn't fall evenly. A young woman in a rural community faces both the urban-rural divide and a gender divide layered on top of it. Bridging Nigeria's digital gap isn't just about laying more cable. It's about deliberately designing for the people those gaps leave behind. Welcome back to EdTech Mondays Nigeria, a platform that facilitates critical conversations on the role of technology in teaching and learning to shape the future of education in Nigeria. This August, we're discussing Bridging the Gap, digital access and opportunities for Nigerian youth. In our last episode, we unpacked what digital access really means. But access statistics rarely tell the full story. Today, we ask a more specific question. Even when connectivity improves, who is still being left behind? And what does it actually take to build inclusive digital opportunities by design? I am Damilola Busari, and I'll be moderating the conversation. I have two of our guests here with me in the studios in Lagos, Nigeria. Please make welcome Mary Omange, Programs Lead She Code Africa.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for being here. We also have Chukwuemeka Okeke, Senior Program Coordinator, Leap Africa.
It's a pleasure to be here again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's get right into it. And I'll start off with you, Chukwuemeka. Leap Africa has intentionally designed programs that reach young women and underserved communities. What lessons have you learned about making digital opportunities more inclusive and equitable from your work?
That's a very, very pivotal question. So from our design, especially around all of the programmatic areas that we work around, we, as a matter of fact, put technology as cross-cutting across all of our projects. It has to be at the center of it. So that has led us to quite a number of discoveries. The first would be, you cannot design without the young persons sitting at the table, right? What that means is the young persons are at the center of every single design that we create. We do what we call a needs assessment. What that means is, even if we're going to engage technology, adopt any form of technology, whether it's a learning management system, a simple Kobo tool that they're going to use, they have to be the ones shaping that conversation, and then we're designing with them, together with them at the core of it. The second would be that adoption isn't the same thing as penetration. What that means is a young person in Lagos can have quite a number of experience just working with a certain technology. But what does that mean for somebody in a remote location in Southwest Nigeria who doesn't have access to the level of knowledge and capacity building that someone in Lagos has, right? So it means that when we design, we have to factor in the person who is in a remote location at the same time a person who's in an urban location. But you're also designing as well with gender inclusivity in mind, with educational background as well, and at the same time, you're thinking about what are the outcomes for these two persons or this number of persons in a global economy. You're also designing in comparison with other locations outside of Nigeria, thinking about Africa, and comparatively as well with the global north. So our design also takes into consideration certain metrics, demography for the people that we design for. As part of the learning as well is that when we complete programming, you have to come back again to lessons learned. What are the biggest lessons that we've gotten from implementing, for example, a learning management system just to scale the learning so that more persons can gain access to it? Another part of our learning is there is that main critical point between impact and financial sustainability. What that means is that while we want to employ technology at the core of what we're doing, you have to ask yourself, funders are asking about what the numbers are looking like. The numbers are fantastic, but at the same time, while you gather those numbers, they are not as sustainable. Let me give you an example. As part of our programming now, we're thinking about sustainability within the program. So if funding doesn't come, how can the program itself sustain
Run
itself?
itself.
And how many young persons will pay for a digital enabled programming at the level where, even if it is subsidized, they can also afford it enough to experience it? And the truth is, there are not a lot of young persons who can afford that. Such that the program that we put out at say 2,000 without subsidy, it's about 4,500 USD, right? You bring it up to 500 USD, and you do not get quite a number of persons to get into class. So what happens at the end of the day is that, as against the number who take that free LMS course, we say probably 9,000, 10,000, you have just about 50 people who can get in class. So that also speaks to how you're thinking about funding and sustainability and impact at the core of all of this. So I'm just going to stop there, but just give you a sense that there are a lot of factors to a lot of learning coming out from just designing program, and the young person at the core of programming with technology at the center of it. Thank you.
I'm particularly glad about what you mentioned on how programs are designed, ensuring that the beneficiaries of those programs are a part of the design process, because a lot of times it's a missing factor in how programs are designed. I'm going to come over to you, Mary. She Code Africa intentionally combines technical training with mentorship and community support. Why is this model important for helping women to succeed, especially in technology?
Thank you very much. So this pathway which you shared, right, in terms of mentorship, in terms of community, in terms of training, and all of that is actually very important, right, for us as an organization, because when we are designing our programs, we actually focus on the mission of the organization, right? Our mission really stands out, and that's what guides us and what leads us, right? And our mission is focused on equipping women with the right digital and technical skills in terms of training, in terms of resources, as well as mentorship, community, giving them a thriving community experience, and also ensuring that we are bridging a gap, which is that gender gap, and lastly, to also provide an economic independence for the women that we train, right, and the women that we empower, right. So this comes to play in terms of, we don't just in our design, right, we are not just focused on training, we also focused on equipping women in awesomely, right? Awesomely. So in terms of training, in terms of resources, some women, physical trainings, they need transportation fare. I will tell you, during our digital literacy program in Edo State, in Abuja, in Ibadan, practically women were asking for transportation fare almost every day, because they wanted that, because they to attend the
programs.
But because we believe that it's important to empower women, right, we're able to work around that to ensure that the women were empowered, right. So that also comes to play. For mentorship, it's important to note that women actually look up to a woman that looks up to a woman who is higher than her, actually has the potential of leading, right? But imagine someone who doesn't have anybody to look up to. The barest minimum would be the norm, right? So it's important to also have that mentorship. And also in terms of economic independence, realize that it's one thing to equip the women, it's another thing for them to be able to stand on their own and also thrive in technology with their peers in terms of ranking, in terms of leadership, right? And this comes to play in terms of a research with McKinsey, where it was shared that about 46% of graduates of STEM are women, but out of those graduates, 23 to 30% of them eventually get a technological tech jobs, and out of these women, less than 1 out of 10 eventually become leaders in tech. So there's a drop, there's a decline.
Yes,
and we realize
as you climb up the ladder.
Yes, there's a decline. And there's a huge decline, and because of different reasons and different challenges, right, which happens everywhere in the world, not only in Nigeria, but across different countries in Africa, right? So we realized that it's important to have that community, it's important to have that mentorship, it's important to provide access to opportunities, to internships, to job placements, and which is one of the things which we are doing at our summit, SA Summit, which I said is happening in September. In as much as we are celebrating our 10th year anniversary, we are also giving a platform where over 10 hiring companies will be available and women can come in there to get interviewed for jobs, right? So that alone and many other perks, there's also an opportunity to win a laptop and also get other scholarships, right? So we are very intentional about our design, and it's really, really important to ensure that African women are actually equipped with the necessary skills and they can also thrive alongside. And I would also make mention of a particular audience we don't really often talk of, and that is women with disabilities or people with disabilities. These women do not have, imagine a woman who's coming from a disadvantaged community without access to funding and all, and also does not, is also a person with disability. That person is practically have any like hope at that point in time. But I believe that also it's important that we get our designs right. And as much as we're getting our designs right, partnership is also very important. As a non-governmental organization, we can't do it on our own without funds, right? And which is one of the reasons why we leverage on partnerships, right? In terms of organizations who would like to support with co-creating programs, with mentorship, probably their staff having to mentor women, and also to provide devices that would also empower these women, and lastly also funding in terms of the programs and all that we do at She Africa. So I would say that is really important for us.
Thank you very much for sharing, Mary. Let me come over to you, Chukwemeka. I realized that Mary's response had sort of brought us into this part of the conversation that I wanted us to explore. If you could redesign Nigeria's digital access programs from scratch, what would truly lasting inclusion look like?
I think it would take varied forms. If I had the magic wand to actually change what it looks like, I would say I would think long term first and foremost, because I believe that the digital footprint in Nigeria, adoption in Nigeria, requires a certain level of will. It's not like we do not have the fundamentals. It's not like we do not have the structure in place. It is the will to accommodate that it would happen over time. It would take into consideration what's happened in China, what's happened in other parts of the global north. Let's even bring it home. What's happened in East Africa? I could mention a couple of countries who are doing fantastic work and have become the hub of innovation in Africa, and say that it has taken them quite a number of time. So one is that there would be that proper alignment between our educational system and our technological ICT infrastructure currently. So what that means is that the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Information and Technology, and also the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, there has to be a synergy. What that means is that a young person who gets the right education from the very basic can then develop and grow working with private organizations, non-governmental organizations to then get into placement or jobs. And then there's that symmetry where either the government is providing a job or the private organizations are providing the job opportunities, or even internationally, right? Just think about it. How is it that our educational system doesn't fully prepare people to get into tech jobs, but at the same time, the government wants to benefit from the funding that comes from international jobs that the young persons have by themselves designed to improve improve themselves to get. So there has to be that handshake. So the first design would be thinking long term, and that would also take a certain level of advocacy. What that means is that there's partnership, there's ownership, there's accountability within NDAs, within the government, in how it's designing programs and structures around education or technology or employability in that sense. The second would be that I would even get to the grassroots, because it just feels like a certain generation has sort of found a way to fend for themselves, but a certain generation is coming and they are going to be at the heart of technology. So how are we building within our primary schools and secondary schools and nursery schools or K-12, right? How to begin to groom these guys for the next generation. And then thirdly would be, how do we even measure the traction? How are we thinking about the outcomes or the traction for technology within the country? Who is designing for outcome harvesting? So how are we measuring impact? Because without data, we cannot categorically plan for the future. You're talking about sustainability, redesigning it. It's because we don't have data to work with at the moment is why we're even trying to put things together and working with data that's interpreted from other people to us. Can the NBS give us the right statistics for young persons and internet penetration for young persons and adopting technology?
Okay. That's a lot. But thank you very much for sharing. You definitely have shown us that it's not something that one organization can do. There's going to be a lot of collaboration across board to ensure that designing Nigeria's digital access programs is something that at the end of the day benefits all Nigerians, and all the stakeholders must be a part of that. Today's conversation definitely reminds us that closing Nigeria's digital divide isn't just a numbers game. Real inclusion means redesigning programs with young women, persons with disabilities, and of course, out of school youth in mind from the start, not just as an afterthought. My question for you is this: what would make digital learning more inclusive for young women, persons with disabilities, or underserved communities where you live? In our next episode, we'll move from access itself to what access makes possible. How does getting online actually translate into learning, mentorship, and of course, income for young people? Share your thoughts with us on social media or via WhatsApp. SMS us on 0703 316 50809 or call 0706 402 0742. Remember, this conversation continues on our WhatsApp and Telegram channels, EdTech Mondays Nigeria. You could also catch up on past episodes on YouTube, CC Hub Africa, as well as on Spotify, EdTech Mondays Nigeria. Your feedback will help shape conversations that we host and the policy dialogues we advocate for. Thank you once more to our in-studio guests, Chukwemeka Okeke and Mary Omange. I am Damilola Busari. See you soon.
Tech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.